Chris Kaiser with Captured by CK. So we decided to do something a little different today. Today we're going to talk about random photos and what makes them feel so random and how to fix it. So, quick question. Have you ever looked at your photos later and thought, why do these feel so random? Even though the light was amazing. Tonight I'm going to fix that. Not with settings, not with gear, with one simple decision process that makes your photos feel intentional every time. Because most randomness comes from this. You start framing before you decided what the photo is actually about. So the camera is up, you're moving, you're reacting to light, and the composition becomes accidental instead of planned. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to give you a 3-step process: subject, position, and edges. We're going to decide what the subject is. We're going to get ourselves in position. We're going to check the frame and check the edges around the frame to make sure that there's nothing in there that's going to distract the viewer. It's fast, it's repeatable, and you can use it in your next shoot immediately. So whenever you're planning your next outing, you can use this right away. And here's the promise: if you apply this, your photos won't just look better, your results will feel more consistent. Drop in the chat, what do your photos feel like right now? Are they random? Are they cluttered? Or are they almost there? Because it can be any one of those two. So the goal here is to, even if you have good light, that doesn't always make the photo perfect. It can still feel random. So you gotta set boundaries. No gear, no presets, no fluff. You'll leave with a 3-step process you can repeat. Type random if this hits for you. In a minute, I'll show you the one mistake that makes a photo feel almost right, but never intentional, and it has nothing to do with exposure. Random isn't bad light. Random is no clear decision. So when the subject changes from frame to frame, or the edges get messy, so all around the edges here, you have to make sure. Hey, Dolly Catch, how you doing? Hi, hi, Miriam. Nice to see you. So the edges get messy. So when the first thing you want to do when you decide that you're going to take a photograph is you need to make sure your edges are clean. So all around the edge of the photograph, you need to make sure there's nothing distracting there, unless you decide that you want it to be distracting. Thanks. You have a good day too. Now, that doesn't mean you can't use foreground to make the photo better. It just means that if you do, you need to plan it. So you keep moving. You can't keep moving while you're composing, because nothing will dominate. So you have to step back and you have to look at your photo, decide what the subject is, make sure the edges are clean unless you intentionally want them there, and then get your angle correct. Make sure that your subject isn't being blended in with the background. Make sure that there's nothing dominating your subject, so everything comes out. If you remember one thing tonight, it's the order most people do. Most people do these steps backwards: subject, position, and edges. So you decide what your subject is, you put yourself in position, so you move. You move. Either take 3 steps back, 3 steps forward, go to the left or go to the right, but you move before you start shooting. And then after you think you have a good position for your photo, then you bring the camera to your eye and you take a test shot and you see how that is. You look at the edges. After you decide what the subject is, you put yourself in position. You then look at the edges and make sure that there's nothing distracting. Make sure that you don't have half a pole or the trees are cut off. So I'm going to teach this like a checklist. If your photo feels off, you don't guess, you just run the checklist. So the goal is to make the subject concrete and testable. So your subject is what wins first. And by that what I mean is if nothing wins first, the photo feels random. So if you can't, it's called like the squint test. If you can squint and still see your subject, then you have a great subject. But if you look at the what shape pops up first when you're squinting, so you squint, you decide if that is the subject. What you see first, then you need to readjust, reposition yourself, make sure that the subject is where it needs to be. If nothing pops when you squint, then you don't have a subject yet, and that's part of the problem. When nothing is dominant, there's three things you can do. You can move until the subject separates. So let's say, we're taking a picture of a sunset. But the problem with sunsets is you can't always take the put the subject right in the center. And even if you can, the sun will blow out the highlights. So you almost have to put it on the side, which means that you need something else to also draw attention. So whether that's foreground or the background, you need to have something else to look at. On a day like today, there's no clouds in the sky. So I came to the park because we have these trees in the background. So I'm the subject. I'm right here. So there's no discounting that this subject is clear. But then you go to the back and the background shows a little bit of something that catches your eye. And then also there's no clouds in the sky, and that's why I went behind with the trees, because if there were clouds in the sky, I could move up like this and I would have a better picture. But right now that's just all solid blue, so there's no reason for me to show that. Because, well, thank you, What the Melon, I appreciate that. With the trees and everything, that gives you a nice background, something to draw the viewer's attention, but still while they focus on the subject, which for this picture is me. But so you need to simplify the background and make sure that your subject is separate from the background. So using this picture as an example, right here, we see me, and then the background, I'm separated from the background. See, so, and there's nothing in the foreground. Now, if I wanted to, I could have done this around some rocks or in some grass and put something in between us, but I didn't want to do that for this particular setup. You can also change your height and angle. See, like right now, my angle's a little messed up. There we go. There we go. So you can change your height and your angle to make sure that to remove competing shapes. So if there was something behind me that I didn't want here, like a car or a trash can, anything at all, I could change the angle, and you could fix all that with just by moving or changing the angle or raising your camera up or raising it down. This is especially true with landscape photos. So if you're trying to take landscape photos, I was in Hawaii last week. I was in some great sunset and sunrise photos. I wanted to have some foreground, so I wanted to get closer to the foreground. So what I did is I lowered the camera, got right up to it, and kind of blurred it out. I focused midpoint on my subject, which was the ocean or a wave. And then I also had the clouds in the top. So that's how you do that. So when you're looking at how to compose a subject, you ask, where does your eye land first? So after you take that test shot, take the photo and see where the eye lands first. And then you point out the competing elements. So if there's something that's distracting, like if over here we had some trees on my side or some shrubs on my side here, I'd want to move those away because we don't want the eye being distracted to one way or another. We want to be able to put everything clean to the subject. This is very important. And it's also very important that you don't you fix any accidental composition habit. Position is the decision, the shutter is the confirmation. And so you lower the camera, move, stop, then raise the camera. And that's what you do when you're trying to figure out what the subject is, and when you're trying to compose a photograph. You put everything together, and we're gonna move just a little bit. We're gonna move over here. So, like right now, what we're doing is we're moving our compositions. Now, we're going to be a little bit farther behind. So now we have the foreground, we have something in the middle that kind of shows us that we're at a lake, and we're waiting on the sunset to the sunset colors to kind of come in. So just by doing that, we changed our composition. So the subject is still the main focus here. So I am still the main focus. We see our background now with this angle. We've got some trees back there, and we also have this tree over here on the left-hand side that isn't really all that distracting. Now, if I thought it was very distracting, I could change my angle. And so I could just move myself or move the camera just a little bit to get rid of that. And so it's not there anymore. So it's not distracting. So you don't want to distract from your main subject. And that's very important. So pick a subject. So quick field drill so that you can understand how to do this. You pick a subject, you take 3 steps to the left and stop and look and see what that photo looks like from there. Then take 3 steps to the right and see what the photo is going to look like from there. And then choose the better composition that you like better, and then start to really compose your shot. You don't worry about settings yet. You're putting your composition together in a thoughtful way. So you don't have your camera up to your eye. You're not walking around trying to compose a shot. You decide what your subject is, and then you take several different angles and several different steps on how that's going to work. The next part that separates pre-light from pro photo is the edges. This is where the randomness hides. So we just talked about the edges. We had our edge right up here that we kind of had a distracting tree limb. So I moved the camera so we didn't get that. The edges are the difference between intentional and messy. So you don't want to distract from the subject. Scan all 4 corners. So here. So scan the entire, all of this around here. You got to look at that. Remove bright distractions and edges. So right now, if I wanted to, I could get rid of this. I could bring this down to where it's not so prevalent. But make sure there's no half subjects, half objects, unless you mean to. These trees here, that's fine that we're cutting them off because it's just kind of the background. And we're not showing the whole lake or pond because it's not all that important. But as you can see, it's got a nice reflection on it. So we're going to keep that there. And the fact that we're not showing it all, that's okay because we're doing it on purpose. You got to make sure there's like not a tree moving out of my head or something like that. Like these trees, they don't look like they're coming from my head. They just look like they're part of the background, and that's okay. So something like that you can keep. And if it touches the edge, it should deserve to be there. So all these trees, all this stuff that goes on the edge, it deserves to be there, and it's working for you. Clean one edge distraction at a time and say, this tiny thing is why the photo feels off. So if you have something, like we said, we had that tree right here, it kind of was distracting. People would be looking at that and wondering where it's coming from or what it comes out of. So we got rid of it. So now it's not there. So we've taken care of it. The goal is to keep the system in mind, the subject, the position, and the edges. So you determine your subject, you determine your position, and then you make sure your edges are clean. And that's really the three-step process of how to create a great non-random photograph. You photograph with intention. If you feel your photo is still random, then you might have skipped the decision. So make sure that you remember subject, position, and edges. Edges are especially important. It's a final step of taking a photograph. And then after that, you can go in, set your settings, because you've already determined your composition. Once you determine your subject, everything else gets a lot easier, and it won't feel so random because you're doing so with a specific purpose. So this was a little different than the 5-month experiment on how to grow your YouTube channel. We've kind of moved into some photography tips and tricks, and I'll be doing a little bit of both. So let me know which one you like best and what you'd like me to talk about next Tuesday. We'll probably continue on how to improve your random photos, and I hope this helped. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below, and we'll talk to you very soon. Have a great. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.